Understanding value. It's an essential part of art, something we need to have a basic grasp of in order to take our beginner work to the next level. But let's face it, it's a bit intimidating. So here's an idea. Let's simplify it and start with the basics. I'll get today's project up and running. Then, as we paint, I'm going to talk about my own challenges I ran into when it comes to this subject. If you're also at a point in your art development where you know you should be taking value into consideration more often, then I hope you'll find this helpful. First, we're going to need our images. I'll quickly show you how I found mine on Canva, but feel free to use any images you like. I'm creating an 8.5 by 11 inch document so I can easily print it. Going into Elements, I typed in Simple, Flower, Realistic. Click on Edit Photo, then you can use Canva's filters to convert the flowers to grayscale, so we won't be distracted by multiple colors. None of these images have backgrounds, but we'll choose a more complex image in the next video. I sized mine down to fit 4 on a single page, and once I had them printed in front of me, I started looking over each flower and finding the lightest values. I placed a 1 by what appears to be the lightest area. Next, I found the midtone values and assigned either a 2 or a 3 to these areas. And finally, I added a 4 next to the darkest values. Choosing a single paint color for the first flower, I've swatched 4 different versions of this color from light to dark. I've chosen a paint color that isn't too light and has a decent range because I want to be able to clearly identify the different values. Now assign each value the corresponding number. We're going to try a somewhat improvised version of paint by numbers. Do the same for your other images, using 1 paint color per image. On a separate sheet of paper, I'm using 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I've sketched the outlines of the flowers. My sketches are not exact, but they'll be close enough. So let's begin, starting with all areas that fall into the number 1 category, the lightest value. I've mentioned this before on my channel, but I used to paint with acrylics from time to time. It was never anything I was serious about mastering, but I did like to dabble occasionally, and I really enjoyed using a scroll saw to cut out shapes from plywood, and then I would sand the edges and paint the shapes. I mainly made nautical themed pieces like anchors, sea creatures, or captain's wheel. And I loved trying to create the appearance of depth and dimension on a flat surface. I also liked making a new piece look and feel ancient. The more rustic and worn looking, the better. This meant adding quite a few layers of paint. With acrylics, I remember being able to begin with a base layer and then easily adding the shadows and highlights, working my way gradually in both directions until I ended up with black paint in the darkest areas and white paint in the lightest. With this very basic approach, there wasn't really a need to plan ahead. But what about when we're painting with watercolor? Unless you're using a lifting technique to remove unwanted paint, or relying on something like gouache or another opaque option, then you're probably going to need a plan, right? This is my downfall. As someone who rarely works from a reference image, it can be extremely difficult to find the lightest values, the mid-range values, and the darks, if that image does not exist yet. So instead of working from light to dark, I've been working from one object to the next, painting a mountain, then a tree, then a bush, then a rock. I think this is fine for beginner level art while I'm still getting a feel for watercolors, but this type of approach isn't likely to take me to the next level. Without proper lighting and effective shadows, how will my paintings ever come alive? So as of this very moment, this is where I'm at in my own journey. I'm at a point where I'm ready to take a new approach to watercolor painting. I know this isn't a change that will occur overnight. It's going to take some time to retrain my brain to look for subtle values before looking at obvious objects. So that's what this project is all about, a way to ease into the method of painting from light to dark. As I work on these flowers, note how I'm not painting the entire stem, then the entire bloom, then the leaves. I'm not doing one section or one object at a time. Instead, it's coming together one value at a time. I plan to record at least 2 more videos pertaining to value so we can work our way up to painting an entire scene, background and all, using multiple colors. I'll be using the same paint by numbers technique as it seems to be working really well. If you've watched any of my other videos, then you'll know that I'm all for using low pressure techniques to learn. After all, art should be enjoyable, not stressful. As I move through these 4 layers, I'd say the biggest hurdle I'm facing with this approach is truly looking at the reference picture, studying it, and using it as my guide. I think that once again, this goes back to my previous statement about rarely working from a photo. I'm so used to painting what I think I should see that I'm not always checking in on what's actually there in front of me. Whether you prefer to paint with a photograph for reference, or from your own imagination, or by observing what you see in real life, there's something to gain from each unique perspective. And by sticking to only one method of painting, you might be holding yourself back without realizing it. I know that I'm going to make more of an effort to diversify my process, especially in the coming weeks as I continue to study value. I'm hoping you'll let me know in the comments, do you have a specific method that you gravitate towards? Do you prefer outdoors, painting straight from nature? Do you like the consistency that a reference photo offers? Or do you just love the freedom of creating from images inside your head? Let me know. When I first heard the term value study, I imagined a time-consuming and complex concept, a study done by only professional artists and highly educated art students. But let's break down what a value study actually is. So, value refers to how light or dark a given color is, and a value study is a way of examining a subject and assessing the values in order to understand the shadows, highlights, and overall composition created by these shapes. This is usually done by assigning light, mid, and dark values. Unlike how I had imagined it to be, the value study is actually a fairly quick process in most cases, a way of planning the path forward before diving into the actual painting. But this is just my takeaway, so feel free to add any other information in the comments. As we finish up with number 4, our darkest values, I'm so pleased with the results. Let's take a look at the side-by-side comparisons. Considering the fact that we only used a single color for each flower, we were able to get a decent amount of depth and character. Just imagine what we can accomplish once we bring in more colors to our palette. I can't wait to take this value project to the next level and see how we can improve our art. If you enjoyed today's video, I hope you'll consider subscribing and joining me for the next one. I'll have a link in the description for my YouTube intro video so you can get a feel for what this channel is about. Thanks so much for watching.